to be a young woman must be so, the pressure is, the time pressure is real, because if you want children, you need to get your life sorted by 30, 35. And
it is a clock, isn't it? It's a time bomb. Yeah.
And guys just don't have that timeline. But also for women, if you want to have children, you essentially need your entire life set up, because you need, optimally, you'd need a partner who, like a good partner, not just a partner, like one who's stable and will stick around. And you need to have your life set up to raise children. And that's basically life done. And not done, but like everything needs to be set up, and that you need to have done by your 30. Welcome to We Need to Talk, where we try to figure out how to find fulfillment in life and reduce dissatisfaction. Listen to this full episode if you'd like to hear the reason I created this channel in the first place. We also discuss why adolescent men struggle in their teenage years very often and have the proclivity to join gangs and indulge in impulsive pleasures. And it might have to do with that they are called to an adventure to find their purpose or their path in life. And adventures are treacherous journeys, which they're painful, and you're called to bear the responsibility of the journey. And men or young men want to delay that confrontation because it is frightening, and hence try to find ways to numb themselves or pass the time or avoid that confrontation by joining groups that create their own principles or sort of detach from the rest of society where they might have to bear responsibility. Whereas women have a different kind of instinct that guides them perhaps in their younger years, which is the need or this instinctive, let's say, desire to have children one day. And when you want to have children as a woman, you need to sort of have your life figured out far earlier than men do. If you want to have children, you need to have your life sorted out around latest, like the age of 30 or 35, which is a completely different timeline than men are faced with. When obviously for men and women, there are both pros and cons. So enjoy the episode and don't forget to subscribe. Let's go.
So tell me, what I'm going to throw this back onto you. So what are you hoping that these talks? You say let's talk. That's the almost the catchphrase of your series of videos. But what are you hoping to achieve with all this?
Okay, so it's great that you asked that. Thank you for asking it. In the beginning, the intuition behind, or the motivation behind starting the channel was to map out the phenomenon of life by speaking to the individuals immersed in it, essentially a field study. Because I noticed there's a lot of misconceptions, a lot of misunderstandings, and just sort of a lack of truthful discussion. And I wanted to extract the truth by talking to people. And also another thing was to transfer the wisdom of older generations to the young, because I noticed there was a bit of a lack of a dialogue between adolescents and older individuals. And I think it's quite logical, if you want to understand something, it might make sense to have a talk with somebody who's experienced what you're what you're afraid of, or what you're
unfortunately or fortunately, I think young people, they in a way they want to carve out their own destiny, don't they? And there comes a point, I think particularly with young males, when they actually don't want to hear or are not open to the advice of their elders. It's almost a specific moment in life, probably between the age of maybe 13 and 17, where it's almost as if their ears become deaf to advice. And actually, maybe that is a point of human development, is they're actually not open to advice. Certainly I wasn't at that age. I wasn't bothered by what adults or people in authority said. It was only really in my late teens, early 20s, I suddenly realized, gosh, my dad's a wise person. My teachers, what they said actually made a lot of sense. And what an idiot I was for not listening. And it kind of goes back to what you said, how we started this conversation. What would you say to that 20-year-old? But there is certainly, I think, a point in one's life where we become temporarily closed to advice from older people because it seems irrelevant to us and our current desires, whether it's there's certain things we want to do. We don't want to hear the negative things that adults are going to say about it. We're not interested in their views about our music or what we read or how we spend our time. It's only later when we look back, maybe this is part of human nature, is that we have those moments in our life where we reflect back, but we never actually have the chance to travel back, as you introduced in your introduction. We can't travel back, but maybe that's the course of learning, isn't it? We have to go through those periods.
That thing with young men, I mean, there's a flavor of arrogance in those years. I remember from my time, I thought I had, I'd mapped out life. I knew how everything worked, but obviously I didn't. And I think, I'm trying to think, why is that? Because I think it is a behavioral tendency in adolescent men or boys to go down that path. And I think it's important to save them from declining in those years, because I think those are the years where they gravitate towards gangs also, or some kind of an in-group that is detached from the elders and where they make their own rules, their own sort of God or something. I'm trying to think why that is, though, because what would first come to my mind,
isn't it just a part of growing up that from a very early age, young girls mimic what their mums do. So a 5-year-old girl will already have a doll in a little stroller, in a little pram or whatever, and she's mimicking what her mum does. And then she has a play kitchen, which she's making invented recipes that actually don't exist. She's copying her mum. Young boys, I think, get that later. So when they're the similar age, they're not actually trying to be their dads. They're more interested in kicking a ball around or pretending they're an astronaut or something. And then I think you hit adolescence, and then suddenly you're forced to grow up, aren't you? And I think then, at that point, obviously people reach that period differently, but let's say it's 11, 12, 13. Suddenly, I think they think they've reached the coming of age. So they realize that they think they're already little men, and they're not interested in what people have to say to them about how they act or whatever. And I do think I think young men in particular need older, definitely need older models. And I think when you have single mothers or single parent families where there's an absentee dad, that's the worry, because those children will find other models, whether it's the gang leader or the gang, to supplement what should be done by their father.
I think a reason actually why girls adopt or mimic the behavior of the mother, and now this is a dangerous statement, but I mean, I want to hear what you think, is, first of all, it's because for females, I think it is biologically more obvious what their purpose is, whereas for men, they need to figure it out. And the prospect of needing to figure it out is frightening because it entails like an adventure. It's trial and error. It is failure. And men, maybe it's conscious, maybe it's unconscious, try to delay the need to confront that process by, sticking their head in the sand.
Totally. And that's why I think men mature usually much slower than women, because I think, like you rightly said, I think they're constantly delaying it. You only have to look at your own dad. I mean, how immature he is. But no, I think there's definitely a truth there. I think men constantly put it off because it's overwhelming. I think either the perception or the reality, it doesn't really matter because it's the same consequence. of what adulthood means. And I think they are constantly putting it off. And I think sometimes crime is that distraction. Crime is almost like an immature version of play, where obviously it's a very serious version of play, but it's the putting off of real responsibility, isn't it?
Mm.
Whether it's the responsibility to earn an honest living, whether it's the responsibility to take on certain duties, it's in a way it's the relegation, the delegation, or negation of all of that.
Yeah, it's the
yeah.
They deny. I think the frightening thing is responsibility. So they don't want to take responsibility, and then the crime, the instant gratification, the drugs, the partying. It's basically it's half of the equation. It's the fun, but without the responsibility.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely, yeah. Whereas I think girls mature earlier, and generally, I think they are. This is a huge generalization, I know, and it's a stereotype, but they take on responsibility earlier, partly because they have a biological clock anyway. And that's, and if you're going to be a mother and you're going to bring another human being into the world, that's a huge responsibility. And the men often run away from that. They don't want to know anything, they don't want to be part of that for a long time.
Well, I also think I dwell on this sometimes. I think to be a young woman must be so, the pressure the time pressure is real, because if you want children, you need to get your life sorted by 30, 35. And
it is a clock, isn't it? It's a time bomb. Yeah.
And guys just don't have that timeline. But also for women, if you want to have children, you essentially need your entire life set up, because you need, optimally,
totally.
you'd need a partner who, like a good partner, not just a partner, like one who's stable and will stick around. And you need to have your life set up to raise children. And that's basically life done. And not done, but like everything needs to be set up, and that you need to have done by your 30.
I think there's a flip side to that. I think you could say that that's an advantage for women, because they do have a framework, they do have a structure, and very early on that's drilled into them. As soon as a young girl has her period, she knows that she will be a woman, and that one of her roles in life is progeny. Whereas I think men, like you rightly said, don't have that structure. You could say, well, wonderful, that's the freedom. But I think men need some form of structure. Certainly young boys, adolescents need structure, and that's often the only thing that keeps them from going wayward, is because they need goals. And again, this brings our conversation full circle, is they then pursue false gods. They actually think that the whole purpose of life is success, monetary success. So they spend a whole lifetime pursuing that. But actually, they could pursue other structures, other goals, other targets to give them a sort of path that women naturally have. And so men, in a way, have to work out, I think, what the confines of their path, what the railings are, what the fences are of their life. And many never do. I'm going to be 55 this year, and even I don't really know what the purpose of my life is. I'm still working it out. I'm still trying to work things out. I'm still trying to work out how I got here. Did I make the right decisions? Have I regretted anything? I hope not, but it's a constant voyage.
I think then the question is, well, how can you increase the likelihood of men figuring it out, in a somewhat healthy, non-destructive way? And what you pointed out earlier on is the healthy role model thing. I think there is a serious absence of healthy male role models in general.
Yeah, absolutely, totally. I'll tell you what, Henry, do you think we could have a second session on that?
Yeah.
Only because
we can wrap up.
Yeah, and also I think that in a way, if you can spare me another moment on air with you, is a whole nother subject, but it'd be a really interesting one to talk about, because I've got quite a lot to say about that.
Yes, I'd be delighted.
Yeah, absolutely. So perhaps we could have another session on that.
Yes, I'll send you another message, and we'll wrap up now. Marcus,
absolutely.
Thanks a lot.
Can I give you a bit of feedback? Which for a 23-year-old, you're incredibly mature in your thinking. I mean, what I'd like to know is how you've come so early on in your life to have very solid foundations and to have sort of the kind of structure of thinking that you have is, well, very mature, very sophisticated. So good for you.
Thanks, Marcus.
Yeah, but let's definitely do this again.
Yes, I'd be delighted. I mean, I'll let you wait. I'll just quickly wrap up. When do you need to go right now, or?
So I do actually need to go in the next couple of minutes.
Okay. Well, I'll just wrap up quickly. So everybody who is listening, I think you could learn a lot from Marcus. And as you heard just now, we'll do another talk in the coming time. So we'll see you on another episode. Thank you for listening.